The Tower of Babel is an ancient story from the book of Genesis. It tries to explain why people around the world speak so many different, confusing languages. This famous narrative is found in the Hebrew Bible, specifically in Genesis chapter 11. It follows the story of Noah's flood and the repopulation of our entire earth. The central theme is human ambition clashing directly with divine power. The story serves as a powerful cautionary tale about the dangers of excessive pride, also known as hubris. It explores the origins of linguistic diversity across the globe. The tale provides a simple, memorable mythic explanation for a very complex and natural process of language change. Let's delve into this fascinating story, its historical background, and what modern science says about the true origin of the world's thousands of unique and wonderful languages. In the beginning, after the Great Flood, all people on earth were united. They all spoke the exact same language and used the very same common words. As these people migrated eastward, they discovered a wide, fertile plain. This land was located in a region that was then called Shinar, a familiar ancient name. There, they decided to settle down and build a permanent home. They told one another, "Come, let us build for ourselves a grand city with a tower." This tower was meant to be truly magnificent and awe-inspiring. They wanted its top to reach all the way up into the heavens, touching the very sky. Their motivation was to make a great name for themselves. They also feared being scattered all across the surface of the earth, lost and totally disconnected from one another. The people were clever and resourceful builders. "Come," they said, "let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly." They used these bricks instead of natural building stone. For mortar to hold the bricks together, they used a substance called bitumen. This was a sticky tar that seeped from the ground, a strong and waterproof adhesive. The Lord came down from heaven to see the city and the tower. He observed the ambitious project that the united people were constructing with great determination. God looked upon their work and noted their complete unity. "If as one people speaking the same language, they have begun to do this," he thought. He realized that with such unity and shared purpose, nothing they planned to do in the future would ever be impossible for them to achieve or build. This unchecked ambition was seen as a challenge to divine authority. God decided that this collective human arrogance needed to be stopped before it went any further. So God said, "Come, let us go down and confuse their language." This was his divine plan to halt their ambitious project right in its tracks. He wanted to ensure they would not be able to understand each other's speech. Their communication, once seamless and easy, would now become impossibly garbled and confused. The effect of God's intervention was immediate and totally chaotic. Suddenly, a builder giving an order could no longer be understood by his fellow construction workers. As a direct result of this linguistic confusion, the work stopped. The great tower, which they had started to build with such high hopes, was left unfinished. After their language was confused, the Lord scattered the people from there. They spread out all over the face of the entire earth, forming new communities. That is why the city was called Babel. The name sounds like the Hebrew word that means to confuse, or to jumble, which is exactly what happened there. The story serves as a powerful moral lesson from the Bible. It teaches that human pride and attempts to usurp God's power will ultimately lead to ruin. It explains the diversity of humanity as a consequence of this event. The scattering created the many nations and distinct cultures that we see across the world. Thus, the myth of the Tower of Babel provides a definitive theological origin story for the world's many languages and the dispersal of all its different peoples. Now, let's explore the historical context behind this fascinating biblical myth. Many scholars believe the story was inspired by real structures in ancient Mesopotamia, an ancient region. The land of Shinar, mentioned in the Bible, is widely identified by historians. It corresponds to the ancient region of Sumer in southern Mesopotamia, now modern-day Iraq. This region was the cradle of civilization. It was home to some of the world's first cities, advanced writing systems, and truly massive architectural building projects. The most famous structures of Mesopotamia were called ziggurats. These were enormous, terraced pyramids made of mud brick, with a temple or a shrine at the top. Ziggurats were not places of public worship or ceremonies. They were considered to be the dwelling places of the gods, a link between heaven and the earth. One of the most famous and largest ziggurats was Adamananki in the city of Babylon. Its name meant Temple of the Foundation of Heaven and Earth. Adamananki was dedicated to Marduk, the patron god of the great city of Babylon. It was a colossal structure, perhaps reaching 90 meters into the desert sky. Many scholars theorize that this very ziggurat was the direct inspiration for the biblical Tower of Babel. The similarities in form and purpose are certainly very striking. The Bible's description of the building materials is also historically accurate. It mentions baked bricks and bitumen, which were the standard materials for building ziggurats in Mesopotamia. The story may have been written during or after the Babylonian exile. This was a period when the ancient Israelites were held captive in the city of Babylon. During their exile, the Hebrew people would have seen these immense ziggurats firsthand. The towering structures would have been an awe-inspiring and perhaps intimidating sight to them. The story of Babel can be read as a form of social commentary. It is a subtle critique of the power and perceived arrogance of the Babylonian Empire. The Babylonians were known for their grand construction projects. The story frames this ambition as a form of prideful rebellion against the one true Hebrew God. To the exiled Israelites, the ziggurat might have symbolized pagan worship and human hubris. Their story turned this symbol of Babylonian power into a lesson on humility. The narrative cleverly uses the city's own name against it. Babylon, Babilu, meant gate of the god, but the Hebrews reinterpreted it as Babel, meaning confusion. This reinterpretation was a powerful form of cultural and religious resistance. It reframed the grandeur of their captors as a monument to failure and divine judgment. The historical memory of these Mesopotamian towers, viewed through a theological lens, likely formed the core of the story. It blended observation with a spiritual, moral lesson. The story also reflects the reality of ancient empires. Large states often forcibly relocated populations, which resulted in the mixing and scattering of different language groups. The forced labor used to build such monuments was a common practice. The Babel story may also contain a subtle protest against this kind of imperial exploitation. So, while the story is a myth, it is deeply rooted. It has strong connections to the real history, geography, and architecture of the ancient Near East. Archaeology confirms the existence of these massive brick towers. Excavations at Babylon and other sites reveal the foundations of these once mighty ziggurats from ancient times. The ruins of Adamananki can still be seen in Iraq today. They are a silent testament to the incredible ambition of the ancient builders who lived there. The story is a fusion of myth and a distorted historical memory. It combines the reality of ziggurats with a theological explanation for the world's linguistic diversity. Understanding this historical background adds incredible depth to the story. It shows how ancient peoples used narratives to make sense of their complex and changing world. The Tower of Babel is therefore not just a simple children's story. It is a complex text with deep roots in the history of an ancient, powerful civilization. Let's turn to the scientific perspective on language. Modern linguistics offers a very different explanation for the origin of the world's diverse languages than the Babel myth. The scientific consensus is that languages do not appear suddenly. Instead, they evolve gradually over very long periods, often spanning thousands of years in their development. This process is much like biological evolution. Languages change slowly from one generation to the next, with new words appearing and old grammar rules slowly shifting over time. Linguists trace these changes by grouping languages into families. A language family, like the Indo-European family, consists of languages that all descend from one common ancestor. This ancestral language is called a proto-language. It is no longer spoken, but linguists can reconstruct parts of it by comparing its descendant languages like English. For example, English, German, Spanish, Russian, and Hindi are all part of the Indo-European family. They share common roots from a language spoken thousands of years ago. The word for two in Spanish is dos, in French it is du, and in Italian it is du. These similarities point to a common Latin ancestor. This branching model of language change is called the family tree model. It shows languages diverging from a common source, growing like branches on a very large tree. This gradual, branching evolution stands in stark contrast to the Babel story. The myth describes a sudden, miraculous event that created all languages at a single moment. Science does not support the idea of a sudden language confusion event. The evidence points to a long, slow process of diversification, driven by migration and isolation. When groups of people separate, their languages evolve in different directions. Over many centuries, these dialects can become so different that they are new, distinct languages. The Babel story is what scholars call an ideological myth. This is a type of story that is created to explain the origin of a custom or a phenomenon. It provides a simple, supernatural answer to a very complex question. Why don't we all speak the same language? The myth says, because God confused us. This explanation was satisfying for thousands of years. It provided a clear, understandable reason for the confusing linguistic diversity that people encountered as they traveled and traded. Today, we understand the true causes are migration, social change, and time. There is no need for a supernatural explanation to understand how languages are formed. Do all languages come from one single source? This idea is called monogenesis. It is a hypothesis, but it is currently impossible to prove or disprove it. Languages change so much over time that tracing them back more than about 10 years is extremely difficult. The original proto-world language remains highly speculative for now. The origin of language itself is a deep scientific mystery. It likely emerged with modern human cognition, tied to our need for complex social cooperation and thought. The story of Babel, therefore, is not a scientific account. It is a powerful cultural narrative that reflects a pre-scientific understanding of the world and its people. It shows a human desire to find order and meaning in the world. The story imposes a clear divine purpose on the seemingly chaotic reality of language diversity. While scientifically inaccurate, the myth's power is undeniable. It has profoundly shaped how Western cultures have thought about language, translation, and foreignness for many centuries. It highlights a fundamental truth about language. It is central to community. When communication breaks down, cooperation becomes impossible, and societies can fall apart very quickly. Linguistics provides a more detailed and evidence-based account of language origins. It reveals a fascinating story of human migration, interaction, and incredible cognitive creativity over millennia. The scientific view does not diminish the story's importance as a piece of literature. It simply places it in its proper context, as myth, not history. So, we have two competing explanations for language diversity. One is a story of divine intervention, while the other is a story of gradual, natural human evolution. Beyond history and science, the Tower of Babel story carries deep thematic weight. It has been a source of artistic and philosophical inspiration for countless generations of people. The most prominent theme is that of hubris, or excessive human pride. The builders sought to make a name for themselves, effectively trying to achieve fame and immortality. Their desire to build a tower that reached the heavens was symbolic. It represented a desire to collapse the distance between humanity and God, a profound transgression. The story is therefore a powerful cautionary tale. It warns that challenging divine limits and overstepping human boundaries will ultimately lead to disaster and to utter chaos. Another key theme is the tension between unity and diversity. The initial unity of humanity was seen as a threat, leading God to enforce a new state of diversity. In Judaism, the story is often interpreted as a critique of tyrannical, monolithic power. The scattering is seen as a way to prevent one group from dominating others. In Christianity, the story is contrasted with the event of Pentecost. At Pentecost, the Holy Spirit allowed the apostles to speak in other tongues, overcoming the confusion. Pentecost is seen as a divine reversal of Babel's curse. It represents a new kind of spiritual unity that embraces and transcends all of our linguistic diversity. The Tower of Babel has been a popular subject in Western art. It provides a dramatic scene of human ambition, architectural grandeur, and the ensuing chaotic divine judgment. The most famous paintings are by Peter Bruegel the Elder from the 16th century. His detailed works depict the tower as a massive, spiraling, and ultimately doomed structure. Bruegel's paintings capture the immense scale of the project. They show thousands of tiny workers, emphasizing the collective folly and the awesome scale of their misplaced ambition. In literature, the tower has been used as a metaphor for many things. It can symbolize doomed utopian projects or the difficulty of achieving true human communication. The very word Babel has entered the English language. It is now used to describe a scene of noisy confusion or a jumble of unintelligible voices. The story also continues to resonate in our modern, globalized world. We are building our own towers of technology and information, such as the worldwide internet network. Some see the internet as a tool to reverse the curse of Babel. It helps to connect people and overcome language barriers through instant translation and global communication. However, the internet can also be a place of extreme confusion. It can be a Babel of misinformation and angry voices, where genuine understanding is often very difficult. The story forces us to consider the nature of progress. Is our technological ambition leading us to a better, more unified future, or to a new kind of confusion? The myth also has a surprisingly positive side. The scattering of peoples, while intended as a punishment, is also the origin of the world's rich cultural diversity. This diversity of cultures, languages, and perspectives is now often celebrated. It is seen as a source of strength, creativity, and resilience for the human species. Thus, the punishment of Babel can also be viewed as a hidden blessing. It forced humanity to explore and inhabit the entire planet, creating a tapestry of cultures. In conclusion, the story of the Tower of Babel is remarkably multifaceted. It is a powerful narrative that operates on many different levels of meaning and interpretation. It is first and foremost a foundational myth from the book of Genesis. It provides a theological explanation for the origin of the world's many different languages. Second, it is a story deeply rooted in historical memory. It reflects the Israelites' experience with the colossal ziggurats and the imperial power of ancient Mesopotamia. Third, it stands in contrast to the modern scientific understanding of language. Linguistics shows that languages evolve gradually over time through natural processes, not through sudden intervention. The Tower of Babel endures as a timeless symbol. It explores humanity's ambition, the challenge of communication, and the complex relationship between unity, diversity, and divine power.